I would like to introduce Marilyn Bakker, who has lived beside the Pakuranga Creek of the Tamaki Estuary for over 50 years. Hello, Marilyn.
Thank you, Wal. Hello, everyone. Yes, it's true. And when I first, during lockdown, walked along the riverbanks of the creek, I was horrified at the amount of rubbish and litter that I found in this instance. I gathered it together and brought it home and began to think about a project I might be able to make which would heighten the awareness of this problem. You can see the Pakuranga Creek is at low tide at the moment, and there is a beautiful little waterfall that falls. You can hear it from here. It's just delightful. And I wanted to make sure that that was preserved for our future generations. So the first thing that I did was to create this book, which was made entirely from recycled products, including the actual cover, etc., which I've utilised photographs, old and new, and also some of the materials that I picked up. I also wanted to acknowledge Ros Nicholson, who sadly is no longer with us. She was a lovely lady who was ahead of her time in encouraging the public and councils to become more aware of estuaries and the value they have towards protecting our oceans. And today there is a scholarship that is awarded in her memory. You can see I've used recycled material here to indicate stormwater drain, the pipes leading down into the river and into the oceans. The book has been replicated in the form of posters, so each page has been blown up into an A1 poster. So do come along to my exhibition and have a look and see if something that you can learn and something that you can contribute. And please fill in your own personal little note of what you would like to see done or what you can do to help us improve matters.
Hello, Marilyn. What's going on in here today, then?
Come and have a look. We're having a local ecology roadshow today. An exhibition called Reflections on the Pakuranga Creek and the Tamaki Estuary. So come on in. We begin with reflections on the Pakuranga Creek and the beautiful waterway that it is, and also some of the challenges that face this and every other estuary that exists. Because with the explosion of human habitation throughout the world, throughout New Zealand, you're going to have ongoing challenges. We've indicated before Ros Nicholson and the work that she did in this area, and how she is now honoured today with a special award which is there for school children who are encouraged to add to her work in the environment by planting trees, by added awareness, and by collecting water samples to aid council, that sort of thing. And there are a lot of young people doing a wonderful job, and they are awarded through Ros Nicholson's Memorial Trophy. There is quite a lot of information about the history of the difficulties in maintaining water quality in the creeks, and that's something that we need to persist with and continue to work on to improve on a day-to-day basis. So here you can see the Tamaki Estuary in all its glory, the Pakuranga Creek in all its glory, in the upper reaches of Tamaki Estuary. And it's quite a significant waterway. But you can see the growth of the mangroves, which are good, they're great filters, but when you get too many of them, they start to choke the waterways. And that's something which is a result of siltation, when they've developed pieces of land for housing, etc. They do have to take certain procedures to stop that earth from being washed by the rain into the waterways. Otherwise, it causes excessive mangrove growth, and that becomes a problem. Just glancing up, you can see on the top photograph the reflections on the Pakuranga Creek, hence the title. And on a beautiful calm day, it's wonderful to get in a kayak and go off exploring and see what you can see. So come along with me on an ecological tour of the Pakuranga Creek. Here we go, heading towards the factories and the Ben Lomond Crescent. Now that's not without its problems either, because whilst you have some excellent factory owners, some are not quite so excellent, and there is problems with effluent and going into the creeks. There's instances of dyes and paints going into the creek, so it is important that that's monitored and steps are taken to educate our factory owners. There are lots and lots of bird life on the Pakuranga Creek, and one of my favourites is the blue heron. So I've taken a drawing I did of the blue heron and used some of the rubbish that I picked up from the creek banks, and to highlight the fact that when you throw away rubbish, it has its consequences. And it's important that we act responsibly and dispose of our rubbish responsibly. As you can see, the river's narrowed down quite a bit here. The rubbish in the water today. But, it is a very beautiful place to be. Try and capture some of the colour and the variation of the mangroves. And try not to run into them. The boat seems to be nice and stable, and we're just drifting with the tide really. There's more factories at the end there. If I can zoom in without coming adrift. There we go. So we're heading in the direction of Howick and the back of Cascades Road, I believe. We're fairly close to the mangroves here at the moment, but just cruising along nicely and just enjoying the simplicity of it all. Well, the Tamaki Estuary is said to be one of the dirtiest rivers, and if you look at the slime in here, it's a dreadful sight, and I've no idea where it's come from. There's a tennis ball over here. Somebody's dumped their chili bin. Plastic bottles. And algae all in the water. Just, it's quite disheartening really, coming across the patch like that. When around the corner everything is relatively clean, but this of course will feed back into the main course, and that's a great shame. Centering on now, you can just see it's gathered on the side of the boat, and the little dirt, so I assume that someone's put something like cleaning fluid or something like that in the water, but it certainly won't do the wildlife any good, whatever it is. There is a great deal of variety of the bird life in the Pakuranga Creek, and I had the privilege of building a relationship with a feral Muscovy duck that lived down in the creek. You can see him there here. They're building a nest in a flax bush that had been ripped out from the bank, and he would come up every 2 or 3 days to supplement his diet, and I would give him some seeds and pellets, and it was a real pleasure. And it was fascinating to see the way in which he behaved. And he used to climb up with his tiny little legs. You can see he's only got small legs. Climb up the bank, right up here, up to the fence, and wait patiently until he was fed and watered. He would never tame. He wouldn't allow you to get too closely. But he was very appreciative of any help that I gave him. I found him fascinating the way he crossed over his wings to dry himself, puff himself right up, and then like that in order to dry his feathers. Very entertaining to watch. But he lived down in the creek, and you can see him across the other side of the creek there. And the little fellow on the right-hand side was a shag that used to come and visit him regularly. We also had a blue heron and a cormorant. So the three mates would sit on the branch alongside Lucky Duck like little men in the bar, and it was very entertaining. The little pond is a gathering of storm water coming from the stormwater drain, and that is what the duck generally bathed and drank from. It would be quite a few nasties in that, I would think. So I made sure that he also had some fresh water when he came up. Aren't you beautiful, Lucky Duck? So good to see you. There she is, supping on the dew. And you can see that was my shadow in the way. And, must be like nectar to her. She does it quite regularly. You better go back and have some more breakfast. Yes, you left quite a bit behind this time. And she is drinking the dew. Lovely. I really like to see her do that. Can't move my shadow back more out of the way. Oh no, it's her own shadow. You can see her shadow reflected on the grass. The early morning. Yeah, there's her shadow. Yes. Hey, Lucky Ducky. You're a good girl, aren't you? You're a beautiful animal. Yes. I get so much pleasure from your visits. She's quite comfortable around me. Doesn't worry too much at all. I don't touch her. I think she wouldn't like that in any shape or form. She's a wild creature, and I don't want to change anything that would put her life at risk or lifestyle at risk. She keeps a very wary eye about her. She also knows I'm protective of her. And I chase off the peeps and things like that. There you go. Drying off after a bath. Quite amazing how far she can twist her neck around when she needs to get it. I suppose the lice or insects that might be bothering her. Yeah, it's still drying off. She's moved out into a sunnier spot to hasten up the drying. See how clever she is in interweaving her wing feathers. Quite clever. I think Lucky Duck is off. And this is sneaking closer and closer to the bamboo. Hasn't quite made up her mind yet. There she goes. Timer went off. Had a rest, she says. Just bring it up a bit so that we can follow her movement. Yeah, she's winding up a bit now. There she goes. See you later, Lucky Duck. See you later. There she goes, underneath the bamboo. There she is. And she'll disappear from sight very quickly. She drops down. It's quite a steep slope she goes down. Right, she's just checking us out one more time. There she goes down below. And we'll catch her again next time. Right, and now we're heading back towards Rakau Drive Bridge and the Pipe Bridge. And you can see that there is still a lot of factories along the creek at that end. So we're getting the effluent coming in at both ends. And we can see a flock of paradise ducks getting their food from the creek. And there we are heading to Rakau Drive Bridge. And underneath the bridge, it's quite clear how the harmful pollutants and corrosive chemicals can get in the water and make life difficult for the wildlife. We have to play our part and do what we can to reduce the impact of those pollutants and corrosive materials. This is the view from the Rakau Bridge, looking at the Pakuranga football club fields there. And that, I have to say, is one of the worst areas for rubbish and litter, particularly drink water bottles. I've picked up sometimes 6 or 7 just in one visit. So please, sportsmen, take your bottles with you, reuse them or recycle them, or put them in the jolly bin. You can see the growth of the mangrove forest. They grow very, very rigorously, and you also have above what looks like tamariki, a native New Zealand plant, but in fact it's pampas grass, and that is a noxious weed, so it's something we need to watch for, because it looks like a familiar old friend, but it's not. And in the distance, a historic wharf with our early visitors to the Howick Pakuranga area used to bring their scows up to, and it's been maintained and kept for future generations to cover the history of our area. This is the favourite part of the creek for me, because this is where you have an internal waterfall at low tide. There's a drop of about 1.5 metres where the water moves very rapidly over white matter sandstone, which has been embedded with Parnell grit, which makes it very, very hard, and it doesn't erode. So this is where there was an old historic ford, where our ancestors crossed, first of all Maori, to the other side of the creek. It meant a big saving in terms of time to get to where they wanted, and also for the farming settlers who were take their horse and cart carriages across the creek to the other side. In this area here, you get a very deep pool where the fish spool, and you get a lot of bird life coming to feed in that area. So it's a site well worth preserving, and something we've had to fight for to make sure that a bridge wasn't built over there and that very attractive waterfall decimated. And up on top, you might wonder why there is a chair there. It's because we were recording the sound of the creek. It's to my ears, it's quite a beautiful sound, and one worth recording.
There's the start of the water cascading over the rocks. It's quite a fall coming down. You see it here, in two, splits in two. There are cascades on both sides of the rocks. And it steps down. Just lovely. Really delightful. You can see the two areas where it enters the water, enters the greater fall. And reasonable depths here in this part of the river.
And here in the corner is a wire sculpture done by artist Sharon Watson. It's a remembrance of Lucky Duck and the beautiful white Muscovy duck, and very talented sculptress, Sharon Watson. Oh, hi, I'm Marilyn.
Hello, I'm Daria, Pest Free Word, local Howick word. We engage with local residents and we help them to care for the environment by helping them to control weeds and pests. So feel free to ask any questions.
Oh, weeds. Now, I've got a really pesky weed called moth plant.
Really?
Right on the bank. That's a real worry. What do you suggest for that?
It is a very bad thing. It's also bad for humans just as for the native plants, because what this thing does, it suffocates the native plants, and also it has this poisonous sap. So what we recommend is to use this cut and paste method, especially if you discover a big vine at your property or around. The reason why is if you just pull it, it won't work. It will regrow again. So what you want to do is you want to find the base of the stem, you want to cut it, and then you want to apply some picloram. This is a herbicide that burns the roots and prevent them from growing.
So where does a person get that from? If you've got the problem, growing, say, on the local banks, where do you get it from?
You can get this base from us.
Really?
Yes.
Is it expensive?
It's covered in your rate. Just as it is covered for the traps, you can also...
Right.
Yeah,
So they're basically free of charge to ratepayers or to everybody?
to residents of Howick area. Yeah, you can get it from us, and you can get free traps for backyard trapping. We provide people with rat traps and possum traps.
Oh, right.
Again, you contact us, you describe what the problem is, and we will deliver a trap for you.
Wonderful.
We have a variety of traps to select from. We have some professional traps. They are a little bit, it takes a while to
load them?
Yeah, to know how to operate them.
Yes.
So for the beginners, we recommend the easier one. This one is T-Rex. I'll show you how it works.
I like the name T-Rex.
Yes, I know, it's a killer. So this one, you turn it upside down.
So if I'm the mouse, there's a mouse, isn't there?
That's a Mr. Rat.
Mr. Rat.
Mr. Rat.
Right.
So you have this trap, you turn it upside down, and there is a slot inside. You take it out, and you put some peanut butter in it or some mayonnaise.
I can see his nose moving already.
Yeah,
That peanut
yeah, it is excited already. So we put it back for Mr. Rat, and then we leave our trap. We need to set it on, and it's very easy with this type of the trap. You just drive it until it clicks like this.
Right.
And now what happens? Our Mr. Rat comes sniffing. Ooh, what's that? Ooh! Boom! And it's dead.
Yes. Very
As easy as it is.
Wow, that's effective. Sorry about that, Rat. Yes.
Such is life.
And what about the possum trap? Because we've got a real problem with possums in our area. How does that work? What sort of bait do you put in those?
The cheapest and easiest option would be an apple. So you take an apple and you cut it. If it's a small apple, just cut it in 2 halves. If it's a big apple, you can cut it in quarters.
Right.
You don't have to put too many of it, okay? Possums love apples. You can also use other fruits. They're just more expensive compared to apples. Also, I'll tell you a trick how to enhance your kitchen
skills.
Yes, skills. What you can do, take some cinnamon powder and rub it into your apple. So that will enhance the aroma, and possums are really, really attracted to cinnamon smell. You can go even further. You can take this cinnamon and rub it in the bark next to where the trap is. And possums will go mad.
Yes. So it sort of acts as a, it's like the smell of cooking flowing
Yes,
out of the
pretty
kitchen.
much. Pretty much.
Come into my kitchen. Yes. Great. Well, I've learned a lot. Now weeds are something that I'm always interested to learn about what it entails a weed. Do you mind if I take one of your brochures?
Yeah, feel free. Feel free. You can take this guide.
Thank you.
It will tell you what kind of weeds we have in area, why they are bad, and how you deal with them. We also have separate booklet dedicated to moth plant as one of the nastiest weeds we have. And again, it tells you how you can identify it and what you do with the pods and with the vines.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's very informative. Thank you for that. And perhaps you'd like to tell us something about Pestry, the organisation, and how you came to be involved in it.
Right. Me personally, I started working with Pest Free Howick Ward in August last year. So I'm one of the conservation assistants.
Right.
There, we are a local board. We work in collaboration with Auckland Council.
Yes.
Um,
And do you do this full time?
At the moment, it's my part-time job because I'm also a student at the University of Auckland. But once I'm finished with my studies, I'll think I continue with Pest Free Ward full-time.
Oh, excellent. Well, it's lovely to have met you, Daria.
Likewise.
And well done on a job well done. And I'm sure that people will be in touch with you for some help and looking after them, getting these nasty beasts under control.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Cheerio.
Lovely meeting you.
Right. Sadly, there are challenges. And one of the key challenges is the ageing infrastructure that we have. You can see the ageing water pipe. This is a stormwater drain. It's flowing directly out into the creek. So there you can see here on the concrete pipe it's deteriorating. Auckland Council's doing their best to catch up, but there is a lot to do. This is an indication of stormwater drain blockage. So this is in our local street. We had a heavy rainfall for a relatively short space of time and we had a flood. So people can do their bit and make sure that the stormwater drains in their street, the top's kept clear of litter. In fact, if they can stop throwing litter into the street, that will be a big help. This is the rubbish collected in just 1 hour's walk along the walkway, and quite a bit of that rubbish was utilised in a sculpture that I made, and we'll show you that at a later stage. So this is the ongoing challenges for us, the factory discharge and runoff and rubbish dumping. And some of our pests that make life difficult, the moth plant, which we see here. Now this amazing natural weed is, as you can see in the photograph here, when it ripens and is ready to expose its seeds, it just blows right out and can contain up to 1,000 parachute seeds which will float over a wide distance. And that's one of the reasons why it's such a pest, because it chokes plants, chokes our native trees, and is a real nuisance. And not to be confused with the choco, which is an edible vegetable and good to have in the growing in the garden. So there's two. Just walk that in so you can see the difference. Of course, opossums, weasels, rats and feral cats are a challenge, and people such as Pest Free Howick are doing their utmost to encourage homeowners to take control of those, and they're also setting traps in the district, and they'll come and provide free traps for people. So there you can see from that photograph there, uncontrolled clearance of banks with the earth pouring down into the creek when periods of rain, and the variable water quality. So the councils do test the water from time to time, and sometimes there can be some real nasties in it. So I wouldn't advocate swimming in it, and certainly not putting your head in the water. If I turn this way, you can see this would like us to talk about contaminants in the sediment. Again, the council are testing for copper, lead and zinc content, and they're all found to some degree in the sediment. There's quite a lot of wild marine life in the Pakuranga Creek, but there's no real database of it, so that would be great if we could encourage students, for example, to record some of the marine life that they find and see in the creek as they do their studies. In terms of the history of the area, as you saw before, the present-day Tamaki Estuary was formed about 7,000 years ago when the valley was flooded. And then in the 1600s, the Maori name for Picton Mountain District was called Pakuranga, which was then shortened to Pakuranga. And it refers to the legend of the day the earth caught fire. And yes, so there was a substantial pa in the area between 1600 and 1680 AD. In the 1900s, the Pakuranga parish extended from Tamaki River to Turangi River and back to Smales Mountain, East Tamaki. And the population was about 277 people. But in the 1960s, some sections were offered by Fletchers, and there was quite a building boom and a population boom, and the population grew to 2,660 by 1996. And of course, it has expanded considerably since then. But just to show you, that was quite a significant time when we went from a farming community to a suburb. And it was called Vim Valley in those days. Just again, a reflection of life in the suburbs and the part that the creek played in the everyday lives. The children used to fish, swim, and really enjoy the big swimming pool they had in their backyard. In 1996, we had a situation where a walk bridge was going to be built across the internal waterfall that we mentioned before, and a group of locals, including myself, and from people from the other side of the creek, had a protest. It was quite a substantial one. Had to do presentations to the Auckland Regional Authority at that time. And with the help of Ros Nicholson, we were able to turn that around and convince the council that that was not a good thing to do. And this is the Burswood side of the Pakuranga Creek. And you can see here that the council's already begun and done a lot of work to improve the habitat of wildlife. One is with the planting of native trees and shrubs such as flax, building of walkways for cyclists and pedestrians, and putting in filtration ponds, which create additional habitat for the wildlife and creatures that live on the banks of the Pakuranga Creek, but also in the Pakuranga Creek. And already there's quite a lot of activity with wildlife in those ponds. And lastly, this is basically a summary of all the challenges and some of the highlights of the Pakuranga Creek. You can see the moth plant sneaks in there. You can see the sign, no dumping. And just a metre or two away, someone had just dumped all their rubbish off a building site. No excuses. People are invited to write their own ideas of what we can do to improve our estuaries and therefore our oceans, and what part each of us can play collectively and individually. Papa Tua Nuku, our Earth Mother, is breathing. What lessons for our environment can we learn from our COVID-19 lockdown? What can we do differently in our own backyard, our neighbourhood, our city, our country, our world to make it a more sustainable place? Your comments and ideas are most welcome. So first came the book, then the posters, and lastly the sculpture. And this came as a result of another walk along the Pakuranga Creek to the Pakuranga football grounds, where I found, rather to my horror, this broken chair, abandoned, along with all the rubbish obviously from a picnic lunch. And I was shaking my head that people could feel that it was okay to leave this all behind after having a pleasant picnic for someone else either to pick up. But I was concerned because microplastics in the waterways are, a major problem in our society. So I thought it was worth highlighting this aspect in terms of the sculpture. So it's precarious balance always that we notice of human habitation and our beautiful natural spots. We have flax, which is a material of great strength. It's wonderful on the river banks for holding the banks. It's a beautiful natural plant which has flowers which attract native birds such as tuis. And I wanted to show the two sides to the coin, the beauty of the flax versus the not so beautiful rubbish that's left behind, and centre on the precarious balance of nature and what we as humans can do to improve. So, put your rubbish in the bin and do clear your stormwater drains in your neighbourhood. Just take that rubbish away so it doesn't go down the cesspit and into the pipes. And remember, a clean estuary is a clean ocean. You can make a difference. And just let's respect the tuis, the fish, the water, the trees. I hope you've enjoyed the exhibition. Reflections on the Pakuranga Creek is an Arts Out East project supported by Tuhi and the Howick Local Board, and with special thanks to the Rice Family Partnership, who allowed us to use this very appropriate venue. I'd like also to thank Pest-Free Howick for joining in the exhibition. Thank you and goodbye.